Hey, look, my understanding, what I see is the body will heal itself. The body knows what to do. If you just give it the right gasoline, if you put like jet fuel in your car and you wonder why it's sputtering and not working right. So we overwhelm our bodies with this food that was the food of kings and queens, right? We can get today, almost everybody can eat this high saturated, highly fat, and today it's even worse because it's hydrogenated foods, all these additives, so we have this illness and this sickness. Oh, by the way, I'm just going to say, as I usually do, I'm not going to leave you hanging like how terrible and understanding, which it is really bad, this disease is. We'll get into like a little bit of the, like I always do with the solution on a different level. Usually we talk about we attack it from a spiritual angle, but it's that change of thinking. Look, the diets don't work. Do you realize, I always say that, but here's the medical reason. I always say because you're trying to control it. But do you realize what's the food that the diet companies give you? You have all of these companies, they send you the food, they're billion-dollar industries, and it has all the poisons in it. So you're wondering, you're just getting smaller portions of the poison. So how are you gonna resolve it? Here you weren't even happy with the bigger portions, and now you're getting the smaller portions. By the way, when they sit there, and I said those scientists in the medical profession, what they do is, and the psychologists, they look for stuff that's addictive, more addictive than cocaine and heroin. I always say people who, when I work in 12-step programs, who are addicted to all these other things like drugs, white powder, just like the white sugar, they said the food is much more difficult. But it's like designer, they have what they call designer drugs. Well, we have designer food. Do you realize the insanity? I mean, when I'm saying all this, does it really sink in that the insanity of where we're living? It's just like people were smoking the cigarettes and nobody, they had it on TV, how great it was. And then they have a doctor on TV. Oh, look, this whole craziness going on with this whole society with the food, but we are killing ourselves and our families. We're doing that, but we can't help it. We have been totally inundated and brainwashed. And again, it's big corporations, it's government, it's the diet companies, the medical profession, the lobbyists, right? We don't have a chance. The thing is this, that there is a way out, but we have to understand with the nature of the disease and what they're putting in the foods. So let me tell you what I do. I already told you about all these medications that I used to be on. Again, 0 medications. Do you understand that? I was on up to 10 medications. And each medication, again, I'm a pharmacist, each medication causes other problems, right? And I was trained that the answer is the medications, right? The body is so miraculous. The body, here's an example. When you get a cut, right, do you ever look at it? It's like magic. It heals itself, right? You take it for granted, but do you ever think of the magic in all of that? And the magic of looking at a cut or something and it's just really healing on its own? And the problem is that the food is the thing that's the poison in the food. So when you start to see that the food is the problem, then we can do a solution. But until now, we never realized that, hey, when my kids were young, what did I give them? The Pop-Tarts and all of this food. I didn't have a comprehension. I'm medically trained, but I didn't know that. I thought, oh, it's a bunch of baloney, this stuff with, eating like Popeye with his spinach or an apple a day. Believe me, it's true. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. Look at everybody around you, yourselves, and the sickness and illnesses that we're all getting here in this country and the problems we're having, right? It's all due to this terrible food. They make all these foods with, I get a list here of all these hydrogenated oils I told you about, all of these things, the synthetic sugars. What I do is I eat one ingredient in the foods. 95% of food in the supermarket I can't eat. But by doing that, I can't eat enough. I give you a challenge here. If you eat very wholesome, one ingredient in the food, because all the calories are in the sauces. You go to a restaurant, it's all in the sauces, the oil, sugar. They call it SOS, salt, oil, and sugar. Salt, oil, and sugar, right? And flour, anything processed. But if you eat a whole natural food, then the whole thing is different because that has 1/3 the calories. So you can't eat enough all day long. You could try to eat, but you can't eat enough food to get over this addiction. So anyway, the whole thing is this. And the corporations, big pharma, the government, the diet. So, here's what I wanted to say. And I was talking about the poorer diets. In poorer countries, and if I didn't mention this already, they have a better diet than we have here. And what is more important in our health? So, Okay, but anyway, let me get a little bit to the solution. Okay, one of the things is this. When we have this change of eating, it takes a while. Look, anytime like a drug addict, which we are, we're food addicts. Some of us also have the problem with drugs and food and the compulsion to eat. It's never enough. But there is a period of detox. So if you're addicted to sugar, and there's a period where you have to get over, or sugar or the oil. It sometimes takes a month, 3 months, but eventually it becomes. So we were brainwashed into thinking the normal thing and getting addicted was to be this food was going to bring us the happiness and joy. And a lot of the other meetings, and if you go on YouTube, you'll see a lot of the meetings there are all about a lot of the spirituality, to change your perception towards the food. But I want to get just mainly down to a little bit more of the basic thing about the addiction itself, as far as going, and people try to detox, and there is a period, but after that the food then tastes so good, because what happened was our palates became totally clogged up with the sugar, the oil, and we became gooped up with all this goopy food, so we couldn't even taste it anymore. And just like an addict, here's the thing, like being an addict, you always need more and more and more and more, right? You need more of your addictive stuff, because you're depending on that, because the receptors in the brain, after a while, they can't give the feedback anymore, so you got to give more and more and more of this addictive food to the brain. So, but after a while, it just becomes where when we get off of it and we see there's a better way, when we don't look, because the addiction is enslaving us. It's making our lives miserable. You ever see, you know about drug addicts or alcoholics? Their life is about the drug and the alcohol, and we sit there and say, hey, look at them. This guy's hooked on cocaine, and our country puts him in jail for years, or I don't know, whatever they do, or they make it illegal, very hard for a person to get these drugs, right? Maybe a little bit with the food, like they tax cigarettes or something. No, what they do with the food is they subsidize it. The government's paying money to the companies to produce more of this food that's really bad. So do we want to be a slave in our life to the corporations? Do we want them to kill us? That's what our families. But there is a way out. It's because once you get into a normal way of eating, your mind straightens out. Physiologically, you get a full feeling, because these things they put in the medications are directly in there to do just the opposite. They're directly put in there so you don't feel these full feelings or anything like that. So what happens is that as we go along and we have that change of perception, change of eating habits, it's called the normal one. We got to realize how crazy and abnormal our thinking was, and again, being brainwashed. So I don't want to be a slave to what hey, look, on TV, they play these, it's like going home, eating good food, or they play the song, the music, and it's like a siren song, but it's all going to take us away from it takes our health away. Psychologically, we're a mess from all the sugar, the high, the low blood pressure. Physically, we're going to die younger. We're miserable because of our addiction, but our lives become all about the food. So we had to have that change of thinking where we started to turn around and see things differently. I saw something on TV years ago, and it really struck me. Here was a situation, and it's related to our society's attitude towards drugs. But so there was this famous celebrity. He was on the TV, and he was like they do. Some of these celebrities are in or out of jail. They're bringing them to court because they say they should have a higher example. They should show, not be on these drugs that they're taking. And meanwhile, this guy was very successful. He happened to be an athlete, and he was doing his career successfully. So I'm not going to say whether drugs should be legal or shouldn't be illegal, but what I'm saying is that when he was being interviewed, the guy there said, hey, look, this is what I like to do. He says, look, rather than you going out and thinking of these drugs, and why don't you come to me? We'll go to this place where they have great ice creams. The guy was he was very heavy, and he looked very unhealthy, and he wasn't that old. He says, I'll take you there, and, we can enjoy an ice cream together, an ice cream sundae. So I'm sitting there saying to myself, this is our country. We're going to go and enjoy all of this, and they're looking at all these other people on their drugs and what they're doing. But a lot of people, unfortunately, die from alcoholism and drug addiction. But what do you think it is compared to the food addiction? That's why I say it's the biggest epidemic in history. Do you realize most all these strokes, heart attacks, a lot of the cancers, and all of these different things are, and they all relate to the type 2. Hey, look. The type 2 diabetes causes all the other diseases in our life. Do you realize that? When you read about type 2 diabetes, kidney disease, the blindness, all of these things, but the blood particular sugar, when it gets high like that, it causes all these problems. And then he said it's insulin resistance. Look, I'm telling you, when you eat healthy and you eat the right foods, in most cases, I was convinced that it was my pancreas that couldn't secrete enough insulin. But I realized that's not true at all because, again, just like I told you about the blood pressure machine, I had to go